One of the biggest benefits of having no life means I can spend hours looking up Sonic lore. But for people with goals and aspirations, Sega created a show to explain the inner workings of the Sonic series. This show is called TailsTube, and its episodes are uploaded on the official Sonic the Hedgehog YouTube channel. TailsTube is a series of shorts where Tails does live streams on an in-universe social media website. In these streams, Tails talks to his friends and discusses various characters, events, and pieces of lore in the Sonic world. And in these chats, all of the characters are represented using Vtuber style models. The series began on March 24th, 2022, when the first episode was released. In this episode, Tails has Sonic on as a guest while they answer questions from viewers of the show. They talk about pretty tip of the iceberg level Sonic lore, like what the Chaos Emeralds are, what Sonic and Amy's relationship status is, and why Sonic sometimes drives a car even though he's insanely fast on his feet. But that's not important. What is important is that this first episode clears up a major question about the Sonic world. You see, Sonic's world is weird in that there are talking animals as well as normal everyday talking humans. Besides Eggman though, humans weren't really a thing in the Sonic series. It was primarily just animals until Sonic Adventure in 1998, when tons of humans started being introduced to the series. So of course, this led to a lot of questions about the world of the Sonic series, like where were the human characters before Sonic Adventure? TailsTube Episode 1 cleared this up by Tails, saying that the Sonic series' world has smaller islands where the animal characters usually live and larger countries where the human characters live. There was an interview with one of the longest tenured Sonic team members, Takashi Iizuka, by the UK retailer Game back in 2010, when he explained how the Sonic world was structured, but it was a bit weirdly worded. He says that there are two different worlds for Sonic games. One is human and one is set on the non-human side. My guess is that world was either a mistranslation or not meant to be taken literally. The fact that he says that one is set on the non-human side makes me think two worlds is more like two sides of the world. As you can see, this was a point of confusion for fans, so Sega cleared it up in TailsTube. At the end of the episode, Sonic comes up with a name for the segment of Tails' show where he talks with friends and answers questions, that name being the Sonic Scoop. The second episode of TailsTube was released on June 9th, 2022. This episode has Tails do another episode of the Sonic Scoop, but this time, he invites Dr. Eggman's robot, Orbot, onto the show. Speaking of Eggman, the most important thing that happens in this episode is that Eggman hacks Tails' stream, and Eggman starts hosting the show himself. Tails eventually gets his stream back, but it is a funny little bit. Also, Tails does the YouTuber thing.
And if you want to help fight the Eggman Empire, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe.
The biggest piece of Sonic lore that this episode touches on is that it explains why Eggman is called Eggman. His real name is Ivo Robotnik, but Sonic started calling him Eggman as an insult. Eggman then decided to embrace the name and make it his own as a way to get back at Sonic. The third episode of TailsTube was released on September 22nd, 2022, only about a month and a half before the release of Sonic Frontiers. This is important because this episode actually ties into Frontiers, as Tails mentions in this episode that following the Chaos Emerald signal led him to the Starfall Islands, the place where Frontiers is set. This episode has Tails do another The Sonic Scoop segment, with the guest this time being Knuckles. The fourth episode of TailsTube was released on March 16th, 2023, making this the first episode of 2023. This episode has another segment of The Sonic Scoop, with the special guest this time being Amy. This episode reveals that Classic Sonic is actually called Classic Sonic in-universe, this name being a nickname given to him by Amy. Besides that, this episode does have some pretty funny images referencing other universes in the Sonic series, like Sonic Boom, the Sonic Paramount movies, and there's even a reference to some early Sonic 1 concept art. One of the great things that TailsTube does is that Tails will often show game footage or images that are relevant to the current topic of discussion. It keeps the videos visually interesting, and it is kinda cool to see a bunch of old games again. The fifth episode of TailsTube was released on October 10th, 2023, and this is the first episode of the second season of TailsTube. The new season didn't really introduce too much at the start, although the design of Tails' monitor and the UI of his screen were improved. Instead of doing the Sonic Scoop, Tails does a new segment called Remember When, where Tails and his three guests, Sonic, Knuckles, and Amy, reminisce about their pasts. This episode has a ton of little bits of lore, like for one, we actually get to learn more about Mighty. Unless you're a super Sonic nerd who has read the comics, manuals, and other supplementary material, to you, Mighty is likely an enigma. Thankfully, this episode of TailsTube gives the casual fan some info. Apparently, Mighty is an adventurer who's actually a really sweet and reliable guy that's fast like Sonic and strong like Knuckles. This episode also confirms that Knuckles' chaotix is canon, as Knuckles brings up the fact that once Mighty helped out him and the boys with footage of Knuckles' chaotix on screen. Lastly, this episode has a reference to Sonic Superstars, which was released a week after this TailsTube episode came out. Sonic mentions how they're coming up on the anniversary of their trip to the North Star Island where Sonic Superstars takes place. I do like how TailsTube will sometimes tie in with new Sonic games at the time. It gives you a good idea of what the Sonic series was like at the time that TailsTube episode was released. The 6th episode of TailsTube was released on December 21st, 2023, and this episode features a new segment called the TailsTube Holiday Surprise Gift Exchange Bonanza, where Tails, Sonic, Amy, Knuckles, Shadow, Rouge, and Omega have a party where everyone brings a gift that's randomly given to someone else at the party. This episode is basically a Christmas special. Holiday specials would become a fairly regular thing moving forward. The most memorable part of this episode is that Eggman crashes the party. Tails, being the good guy that he is, gives Eggman a present, a book with a bunch of invention ideas. Eggman, in a surprising show of genuine kindness, gives Tails a gift in return, a one-time only get out of an Eggman invasion free coupon. This is the first episode of TailsTube that really isn't so much about explaining Sonic lore and is instead just the Sonic cast all hanging out and goofing around, which I honestly find just as entertaining. The 7th episode of TailsTube was released on April 25th, 2024, the first episode of 2024, and this episode features a new segment called Between Two Hedgehogs, where Tails invites two hedgehogs onto the show to get to know each other better. This episode is basically just one big trash talking sesh between Sonic and Shadow. It's likely that this episode was made in celebration of the Year of Shadow, which officially started earlier in April. One weird thing about this episode is that Tails shows footage of Sonic Prime on the screen, which I guess confirms that Sonic Prime is canon to the video game's timeline. The 8th episode of TailsTube was released on August 15th, 2024, and this episode has another brand new segment on the show called Finding Fortune with Amy, where Amy does fortune card readings. The only really notable thing that happens is Eggman breaks into Tails' house and interrupts the stream. There really wasn't much in the way of new lore in this episode. The 9th episode of TailsTube was released on October 31st, 2024. This episode is a Halloween special with a new segment called Scary Story Spooktacular, where Sonic, Tails, Rouge, Knuckles, and Shadow tell scary stories and roast marshmallows. The biggest piece of new lore is that Tails gives us the backstory behind King Boom Boo. Yeah, that one boss that Knuckles fought in Sonic Adventure 2. Apparently earlier in his life, King Boom Boo was a greedy human king who sacrificed all of his men in an attempt to find a talisman that gives eternal life. King Boom Boo does end up finding the talisman, giving him eternal life, but the catch is, he lives eternally as a ghost, haunting the ruins of the Death Chamber forever. This is lore that no one asked for, but you know what? I'll take it and be happy about it. The 10th episode of TailsTube was released on December 31st, 2024. This episode is a New Year's Eve special, where Tails calls up his friends and asks them about their New Year's resolutions. Amy's resolutions are to do more community building, do more traveling, and spend more time with her friends. Amy is actually having a New Year's Eve party, and in the background, you can just barely see the silhouette of Tangle the Lemur from the IDW comics walking by. Rouge's resolution is to do more self-care by treating herself to more expensive jewels. Knuckles' resolutions are to protect the Master Emerald, explore the world, do more treasure hunting, and take on unknown challenges. Tails tries calling Shadow, who does answer, but Shadow says that he has no New Year's resolutions. Sonic, likewise, has no New Year's resolutions. Tails' resolution is that he wants to take TailsTube on the road, doing live streams on location at various different places in the Sonic world. This leads into the 11th episode of TailsTube, released on March 27, 2025. This is the first episode of 2025, and this is the first episode of TailsTube on the road, with Tails' first stop being Spagonia University, a location from Sonic Unleashed. The guest of this episode is a brand new character, Professor Victoria. Victoria was actually teased several times before her debut in this episode of TailsTube. In fact, we got a cameo of Tori as far back as the very first episode of TailsTube back in 2022, when a picture of her was used when Tails was discussing the human characters in the series. The fact that Sega was sitting on this character introduction for 3 years is crazy. Tori's appearance is a pretty big deal, as we hadn't had a new major human Sonic character in well over a decade. Tori is a scholar who Tails looks up to, and she goes over some of the lore regarding the Ancients from Sonic Frontiers, who she refers to as the first great civilization, and she also goes over the Gaians from Sonic Unleashed, who she refers to as the second great civilization. So we get to learn about some of the earliest bits of Sonic world history. As usual, someone crashes the party because Orbot shows up at Spagonia University uninvited. Though, Orbot is pretty smart, so he does help add to the conversation. Unfortunately, Orbot ends up getting on Tori's nerves and she leaves. The reason why Orbot ruined Tails' meeting with Tori is because Tails hung up on Orbot back in episode 10 when Orbot called Tails to talk about New Year's resolutions. I thought that this was a cute little callback that gives TailsTube its own little bit of lore, and honestly it made me like Orbot a lot more. The 12th episode of TailsTube was released on July 10th, 2025, and this episode is another installment of TailsTube on the road. This time, Tails is at the Chow Garden in the Mystic Ruins from Sonic Adventure. The main topic of this episode is life hacks. Tails talks to Sonic, Knuckles, Amy, Rouge, and Shadow about different life hacks, which are small little ways to make life easier on yourself. Some of them are actually pretty useful, like Rouge's life hack where she shows you how to psychologically manipulate someone. Rouge says if you want something from someone, you should ask for more than what you actually want first, so that when you ask for what you actually want, it seems a whole lot more reasonable. The funniest bit from this episode is that we find out that Sonic once tried to make a chili dog out of a copper pipe. Also, random fun fact, for whatever reason, Sega forgot to put this episode in the TailsTube playlist on the Sonic the Hedgehog YouTube channel. The 13th episode of TailsTube was released on September 4th, 2025. This episode has another installment of TailsTube on the road, with Tails at the Donpaw Kingdom from Team Sonic Racing. Sonic shows up as well as Jet the Hawk. Jet showing up makes sense as this episode ties in with Sonic Racing Crossworlds. Jet has been waiting for a chance to race Sonic again, and he'll be doing so in the next World Grand Prix in Crossworlds. Jet really wants to trash talk with Sonic, but Sonic just sarcastically fanboys over Jet instead, which is pretty funny. The 13th episode of TailsTube is the most recent episode of the show as of the time I'm writing this, so that's it for all of the episodes of TailsTube. I quite enjoyed this series. It's really nice to hear the Sonic cast chat about different aspects of their world, and even when TailsTube transitioned into just being more of a chill stream where the Sonic characters celebrate holidays, do activities, and just yap, I still found it really entertaining. The VTuber animation obviously doesn't hold a candle to a properly done Sonic animation like Shao Generation's Dark Beginnings, but I think TailsTube's use of illustrations and gameplay footage helps to keep the show visually interesting. From an audio perspective, the show is great, as the shorts are fully voiced by the Sonic voice actors, although Omega's voice sounded really weird in episode 6.
Strength builds beat dexterity builds every time. Go cry about it. Destroying robots brings me joy. It should bring you joy as well.
I don't think they used the right robot voice filter. Speaking of the audio, one thing I really liked was that they frequently used songs from the games that were relevant to whatever the characters were talking about. To put it simply, while these episodes don't seem to have high production values, you can tell that effort went into them. TailsTube has been good so far, and I'm excited for what the series has in store for us next. In any case, I think that's about it for this video. If you're interested in watching more videos where I talk about stuff, here's a video you might enjoy, and here's a whole playlist of Sonic videos for you to check out if you're looking for something to marathon or to just have something to listen to as background noise. That's all I've got to talk about for today though, so thanks for watching y'all, and have a great rest of your day.